Hi everyone, welcome back. So one of the most asked questions on the channel is, if I do the modifications, how much extra feet per second do I get per modification that I do? And although the answer is not quite that simple, because often the modifications needs to be done in tandem with each other to get everything balanced so that you can get the most out of the gun. What I'm going to be doing today, so someone sent me this CP2 now. This is in 0.22, so this is going to give you the most, not the highest feet per second, but the highest FPE out of a CP2 is the 0.22 versus the 177. So what I'm going to be doing today, I'm going to be taking this one to the absolute limit in terms of power. That's still using CO2, so not PCP conversion, just using CO2. What's the maximum you can safely get out of these guns? So I've got this one. We're going to be taking it apart, but each step of the way I'm going to be testing it, chronoing it, and I'm going to show you those chrono results as we do the next step, show you the chrono results again. So this is stock standard with a 70mm spring inside here. Then we're going to test it with just a spacer inside. Then we're going to test it with the 90mm spring. Thereafter we're going to drill out the ports, drill out the transfer port to 4mm, test it again, and then last but not least we're going to drill everything out to 4.5mm and then test again. And in between, what I'm also going to be doing is polishing everything up and seeing how much of a difference that makes as well. Let's start off. Going to test this 70mm spring, standard spring. Going to put in a new CO2. We're going to test it with the JSB 0.22 Hades. So these are 15 grains, and let's see what FPS we get. Then we'll carry on with the modifications and see what we end up with. Alright, let's get cracking. Alright, so I've got the chrono set up here. One thing that you'll need to keep in mind, so I'm just going to be testing with the JSB Hades pellets. I'm going to be doing the testing with the short barrel, which is 210mm. The longer barrel is 450mm. So definitely you will get a higher feet per second on the longer barrel. So it's around about 200, let's call it 250 mils longer, just to make the maths easier. So for 250 mils, basically every extra inch you're going to get about an extra 10 to 15 feet per second with the longer barrel versus the shorter barrel. So just something to bear in mind. It's just because it's more efficient than the short barrel, but for my testing purposes I'm going to be using the short barrel. So we're just going to single load this. Alright, so I've got the chrono set up. These are 15.8 grain pellets. This is the 70mm spring, standard pistol. Here it goes. Let's see what we get. So 434 feet per second, just to make sure it's more or less in the ballpark. Let's load another one. Okay, 438. So definitely we can see fairly decent feet per second. With the long barrel you're probably looking at, I'd say, around about 500, just over 500 feet per second with the long barrel. Alright, so what I'm going to do now, off camera, I'm going to strip everything down. What we're going to do first, we're going to put in a spacer. So this is a 5mm spacer. I'm going to put that in the standard spring. Let's see what feet per second we get. Alright, so what I've done now, just put in that little spacer in front of the 70mm hammer spring, and let's take 2 shots. Let's see what we get now. So this should give us a small increase. Let's see what's the percentage. Another thing just to remember, I haven't put a fresh CO2, so this is still the same CO2, but we should still be fairly consistent at the top end. So 464, first one. I'll work out now what's the percentage increase. $462. So definitely an increase of around about, let's call it 30 feet per second. So if I do the quick maths, that's about an 8% increase. So yeah, definitely something. So next up, gonna take out the 70mm hammer spring, take out the spacer, put in the 90mm hammer spring, and let's see where we get to. Alright, so 70mm is out, spacer is out, 90mm is in. One thing you will need to keep in mind, it may be possible that when you put in the 90mm together with the spacer, that the moment you load your CO2, it's going to leak completely out. And the reason for that is because what happens is you actually got too much of a spacer in here, so it's already touching on your valve stem, so it opens the valve ever so slightly. So the moment you tighten up your CO2, everything just leaks out. So just keep that in mind. With the 90mm hammer spring on its own, you should be safe. It shouldn't keep your valve open. One thing you will need to keep in mind though is that your trigger will be quite a bit heavier compared to just the 70mm or the 70mm together with the spacer. So that's one thing you need to keep in mind. Right. This is still the same CO2 cartridge, so this is basically shot 5 and 6. And let me show you what we get here. $464. Let's do one more. So this looks to be similar to just putting in the spacer, so spacer might be a better option. $463. Alright, so definitely very similar to putting in the 70mm with the spacer, which gives you that little bit of preload, but doesn't affect your trigger as much. So I'm going to, like I said, I'm going all out on this. We're going to see what's the absolute maximum we can get out of this. And next up, what we're going to be doing, going to strip everything down, drill out the valve, drill out the transfer port, drill out the barrel. We're going to do it first to 4mm, then we're going to do it to 4.5mm, and let's see what we end up with in terms of foot-pounds, in terms of feet per second. Alright, so what I've done is drilled out all the internals, so the valve I've drilled out, transfer port, breech, barrel, everything has been drilled out to 4mm. I've got the 90mm spring in here, purely because that's what it was sent with. Let's see what kind of FPS we can get. Okay, that one didn't pick up. Let's go again. 475. So definitely a little bit of increase, but not that much. $471. Alright, so next up, I'm going to drill out everything to 4.5. Let's see if that makes a difference. Alright, so we've got everything drilled out to 4.5, and that's really the max you can go. If I can show you here on the long barrel, you'll see it's like right on the limit of those O-rings, and the same with the transfer port. 4.5 is the absolute max you can go to. Alright, let's see what kind of feet per second we got. $485. This is obviously now not a brand new CO2 cartridge, and we will have a little bit of a dip. Let's give it a bit of time. Around about 485. So I'm saying that's probably going to be about your maximum with the short barrel. I'm going to quickly put on the long barrel, and then let's see what's going to be the absolute maximum we can get. Alright, so 5mm transfer port, long barrel. This is, however, not the fresh cartridge. This is about shot number 6 or 7, and unfortunately if you do this kind of tune, it will go down in feet per second, because it's going to be, your first shot's going to be the highest, because you kind of lose that CO2 self-regulating capability. So let's see what we get. So 612 feet per second, which I'm pretty sure is going to be, if you're in the UK, is going to be above 12 foot-pounds. Again, 612 feet per second, so that's with the long barrel. And yeah, I'd say most likely if you're going to start off with a fresh cartridge, you'd maybe go up to about 620, maybe 625 for your first 1 or 2 shots, but thereafter it's going to drop off quite quick. So there you have it, proof is in the pudding. If you want to go for full power on your CP2 0.22, then this is more or less what you're going to be looking at, and that also shows you the different feet per second in between. So until next time, happy shooting, see you around. Just for interest's sake, I thought I'm going to test some of these plastic pellets that's supposed to be armor piercing, and I managed to get a velocity of 721 feet per second, and check how much difference it made on the power. So the power actually went down from about 13 FPE down to about 11.6 FPE. So definitely higher velocity, but not as much power, but quite interesting.